Tim LaComb joins us here on the Full Court Press. You hear him here on this radio station.
Oh, he's so good.
If you listen to the Jazz,
so good.
As a Jazz affiliate, we get to hear his expert analysis. Pre-game, halftime, post-game. Tim LaComb joins us here on the Full Court Press. Tim, thanks for your time tonight.
Tim.
What's up, guys? How are you?
We're good. We're doing all right. How are you over there? How's SLC treating you?
Well, you know what? I'm good. I'm actually down in, I guess you guys would hate the fact that I'm in Utah County right now, way too close to the school, the other blue school down here. And I get it. Like, I understand it. But I'm a huge history buff, and like, this is a major pleasure for me to, I went back to Memphis. I went to Sun Records, where I saw where all that greatness happened. And like today, to be able to come on the show that Scott Gerard started in college. I mean, are you kidding me?
That's true. And you know what? Scott was not as near as good as I am right now at this age. So you can tell him I said that too.
I would imagine he's got a clip maybe to kind of put you in your place.
Hey, Coach, before we talk Utah Jazz, I did want to ask you about the new hire from Utah State. Coach Ryan Odom, Nate Dixon also on the staff. I know you have a lot of great connections. I was wondering, can I get your thoughts on this new basketball coaching staff and what you think of them?
Well, I'll tell you this. I didn't know, obviously knew who Nate Odom was, and certainly been a fan of his from a distance, just with what he looks to be a great coach and really connects with the guys. And then he's had some success. I mean, obviously pulled off one of the great upsets in the history of the entire NCAA basketball tournament, the biggest upset. So, he's obviously got some really good things going for him, but I didn't know him beyond that. And a couple of weeks ago, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, keep going. Sorry. You're good.
Oh, perfect. A couple of weeks ago, it was early on a Saturday, and I'm definitely a sleep-in guy on Saturday. But my phone rang about 8:30, and it was a Gainesville number. I didn't recognize it, and I answered, and it was my good buddy Nate Dixon. And Nate had Coach Odom on the phone, and we talked for a good amount of time about my experience coaching in Utah. They kind of wanted to pick my brain, and they're very, very kind and complimentary. And I think I'll put it this way: after that conversation and prior to it, but after it, I certainly believe the Aggies are in great hands.
Love it.
So, Tim, this Utah Jazz team, right, the number one team in the NBA, best record, clinched the playoffs before anybody, but certainly the way they've been playing in April has a lot of us nervous. They're not playing their best basketball, and I think they would agree to that. What kind of stands out to you? Why is this team kind of on shaky ground right now?
Well, I think what the Jazz are dealing with right now is what everybody's dealt with all year long. I don't know, because we haven't seen the scenario, but I don't know if, everybody's at full strength if the Jazz are still the number one seed. You got to be pretty honest about the fact the Jazz had stayed relatively healthy, knock on wood, until Donovan, had his ankle injury. And I'm telling you, you take a guy out of the lineup, an all-star out of the lineup, and anybody's going to hit some rocky times. And, from the standpoint that you're missing that person, then everybody else is now, steps up a rung, and they've got to contribute a little bit more. And so that pressure, everybody starts to feel a little bit of pressure there, where as before, if you've got everybody, you're just kind of sailing through So part of it is that the Jazz are dealing with this injury thing really first time this year in a major way. And what's a little bit nerve-wracking is we really don't know the extent or the length of time that and we obviously Donovan's going to be reevaluated after the week, but Mike has had an issue with that hamstring, and the fact that he's kind of scratched from tonight, and you just kind of have to cross your fingers and hope. But I think there's a real good explanation why the Jazz are struggling right now. They're not the Jazz, they're a piece of the Jazz, much like the Lakers have struggled because they haven't had AD and LeBron for so long. So certainly not time to jump off a cliff, and certainly not time to give up hope. But we do have to kind of start dealing with the fact that they might not be the number one seed. And, unfortunately, injury probably will be the biggest cause of that.
So, despite the loss of Donovan Mitchell, is it still excusable that they get swept by Minnesota?
I think the hard part about that question too is most of the league faced a Minnesota team without all their weapons, right? I actually happen to think that Russell and at least the nights I've seen him, Russell and Towns really have a great chemistry and synergy together. I know they've only played like 14, 15 games together, but when they have played together, they've played well. The numbers prove that out. They've been way better than the record that they've, or winning percentage that they've put forth this year. So again, I think it's apples and oranges. I think, the Jazz probably should beat that team, but year in and year out, there's always a couple teams, their scheme and the way they play that give you trouble. And I thought the Jazz were a little bit more casual the first night. I thought they turned the ball over way too much. Second night, I think they battled their butt off. I just think that at the end of the day, they had a lot of open shots that didn't fall. And again, you can start looking at pressure, a little bit of mounting pressure and some fatigue because guys are being asked to do more right now.
Tim, there's been a lot of debate here more recently. How important is seeding when it comes to the playoffs? We've heard Anthony Davis and LeBron James say we don't care that our seed, as long as we're healthy, we'll play anyone anywhere. And I think some people are saying, yeah, they're probably good enough. It really won't matter for their seeding. But does it matter for the Utah Jazz?
Well, I'd ask you guys. I mean, I think inherently there's an advantage of being one, right? And this year it's a little different because they have that little play-in tournament, so you don't necessarily know exactly who your opponent's going to be. But I think that, if you're to choose, you would probably most times you would choose being the number one seed. And I think it's really important from the standpoint that the Jazz would have home court advantage. And I think they've shown this year when they're at full strength, they're pretty tough to beat at home, having only lost a few games here in Utah. So I think it's important, but I also believe it's not the be-all, end-all. I mean, I think, teams that have not been the number one seed have won the championship before. And I do think there's a part of this for the Jazz that you just mentioned with AD and LeBron, that the most important thing is that they're healthy and kind of a little bit in some sort of groove. And so I would almost take that part over seeding because I think that part is way more important.
Who's concerning you more, Jordan Clarkson or Bogdanovich?
I don't necessarily worry about Clarkson because I think Clarkson is what he is. I think you're going to get a good level of effort. You're going to get certainly a high usage rate, and he's going to get his shots up. And for me, about him, it's really kind of in streaks. I'll tell you this: when he's really going, you don't really even give him enough credit for what he does. So I don't worry about him. Bojan, sometimes my concern about him is just his confidence level. And I know Jordan, the last few games when he's been off, has showed some frustration. But I think it's more frustration. I think sometimes Bojan, internalizes it looks like, and takes it pretty serious. And so I think, the way that the Jazz are kind of built, I would almost say I would give a little bit more spiff of confidence to Bojan and let Jordan just kind of work his way through it, if that makes sense, because I think it's really more important about how they're built.
No, that's a good point. It's kind of what's going on between the years.
Yeah. Because it's a huge part of it. We don't process it all. I've always made the joke that fans and media and people that, haven't been totally involved in the game, their experience with this type of deal is 2K or FIFA, and what you do is you just put a bunch of robotic figures out there and you control one at a time. But, you're coaching that team. What you don't take into account is every one of these human beings that you deal with and coach are so different. And they take to things like success and failure totally different. And so much of your ability to relate to these guys and keep them confident, that's a huge part of the job.
With a healthy Jazz team, and you talked about You mentioned that health and playing with some momentum, I guess, or in a groove when you approach the playoffs. With a healthy team and playing with a groove going into the playoffs, how far do you think this Jazz team could really go?
Well, I think that I've seen them. They've answered a lot of questions for me. I go back to kind of some monumental moments, and one of those was, after they had the little plane incident and how that kind of shook everybody, and Donovan didn't make the trip. And, the way that they competed that game really, to me, proved like there's something to this team. Like they've got a little bit of championship DNA in there. And it really is about, there is a process to the playoffs, and they had an incredible amount of frustration last year, the series that they really felt like they had. So I feel like they've kind of paid their dues. Again, the playoffs is so hard to call right now because it's all about matchups. But I do expect the Jazz to get through, I'm going to say get through a round for sure. I don't know, again, how it's going to shake out. And the crazy part is you could face the Lakers in the first round in some scenarios. If the Jazz really went on a crazy skid and Denver finished strong and Clippers finished strong and Phoenix, the Jazz could be looking at 4 playing 5. So, I don't want to go there. But certainly you've got to almost accept the fact that right now they're a little banged up. They're limited, and there's going to have to be guys like Matt Thomas and Miaoni, George Niang, even Trent Forrest. They're going to have to play minutes. And, that's not the playoff plan, but that's where they're at right now.
Hey, by the way, Tim, don't you like this good cop, bad cop? Like Eric's all optimistic, and I'm like, we're done for. It's over. Forget it. And, with the whole thing, this is good.
Now, I need your help to insert a little more optimism into Ajay. This is the number one team in the NBA.
Ajay, Scotty told me you were a little skittish. So, you're like one of those players. I just need to infuse you with confidence, right? Franson's more of a guy like, I slap him on the back and say, it's going to be okay, dude. But we got to go to lunch. I got to look you in the eye and say, hey, I'm with you, man. I know you're not getting the time you need right now. But it's all going to turn for you.
And by the way, tell Scotty, and you can tell Eric this too, by the way, if they would just give me one compliment, it would boost my confidence in an incredible level. So,
but we have to take you to lunch to do that.
You have to take me to lunch to do it. Yeah. Hey, Tim LaComb joining us. He's part of the Utah Jazz Radio Network, does an incredibly great job on the pre, half, and post. Also former assistant of BYU men's basketball. Coach, I do want to ask, the MVP conversation is so splattered everywhere. Steph Curry, Jokic, LeBron. Why isn't Rudy Gobert a part of the conversation? And do you think it's fair or unfair that he is not?
Well, I think there's a part of this deal, and you guys know this. There's part of this that's really a marketing arm, and the flashy stuff. And again, I'll say it: scoring. Scoring is really important for that award. It always has been, probably always will be. And, I think that really, to me, what Rudy's MVP to me is the fact that he does exactly what he should do, and that's be the defensive player of the year. I'm going to be honest. There were times where, I was not able to watch the Jazz as closely because I had the team to coach, and so I'd only see them sporadically. And I can honestly say there was no way I appreciated Rudy for what I do now, being able to watch him every night and really every possession. It's really become a study. I'm fascinated by his ability to move his feet, so much quicker than you would think, and got just absolutely great feet. I think he's coming around as an offensive player. I've seen some major development from the beginning of the year to now. I think Alex Jensen has done an absolutely extraordinary job of getting the most out of him. But I think so much credit's got to go to Rudy for being that great, but also that coachable. There's almost a scale, where you get a really talented guy and you can almost count on the fact that they've heard it all and they know it all, and you're not going to get much through to them because they've had so much success. But with all the success Rudy's had, he's still hungry. He still looks to improve. A guy who, there was a stretch there where he was shooting 40% from the line, and he's certainly been really, really good lately from the line. And I just see him find ways to finish more creatively, more forcefully. His footwork's gotten much better. He tries passes that he's never tried before. You know, he winged one around his back the other night to avoid it getting stolen. I just like the way that he approaches the game. And again, I don't think he'll ever be the MVP. And I think Donovan have a chance to be the MVP because he puts up those types of scoring numbers, and I think that's a big thing about that award. But I'll tell you what, Rudy, people will find out just how valuable he is, especially right now, because the Jazz are going to really have to really grind teams out and guard them. They're going to struggle to score a little bit, so it becomes even that much more important for Rudy to be what Rudy is.
Hey, Tim, great stuff. We appreciate the insight, for you spending some time with us. It's we always enjoy listening to you here on the Fan during these pre-halftime and post games here on the Jazz, being an affiliate of the Utah Jazz. So appreciate your context and inserting a little more confidence into Ajay, that he should be a little bit more positive about this Jazz team.
Just calm down.
Hey, nothing a warm pot pie and a nice Diet Coke, or I don't know what your drink of choice is, but
water on the rocks.
Water on the rocks with a side of lime. Be
Tim,
careful. I hear it's hard up there it's a dry county.
Coach, you're the best. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great show tonight.
All right. See y'all.